Hello, and thank you for joining us today on this discussion about what is resiliency. This is the first webisode in a series that's being sponsored by Mission Healthy Living on resiliency, learning how to cope with adversity. Joining me today is Joe Pyle, and he is the president of the Scattergood Foundation. Thanks for joining us today, Joe.
You're quite welcome.
Resiliency, it's probably a word, or it may be a word, but it's probably not a word that's familiar to many people. So let's start out with defining what exactly does it mean to be resilient?
Absolutely. I think the simplest way for us to understand what it means to be resilient is to look at one's ability to cope, one's ability to bounce back from an adverse or a stressful situation.
And that's it.
I think that's the simplest way to think about it. I think when we talk about resiliency, there's the ability to recover from a stressful situation, but also there are individuals who find ways to navigate those situations and have outcomes that are different than others.
Okay, very good. So, but why does it really matter? Why does it matter to be a resilient person? I think we can look at the obvious and say, oh, well, you're just going to navigate through life better. But what are some other reasons, long-term reasons, short-term reasons, why it matters to be resilient and why somebody should even want to work toward being resilient?
Sure. Well, I think when you look at the characteristics of a resilient person, you look at an individual who creates connection, that has strong relationships, has positive relationships. And when you look at the fact that they set goals for themselves, they have a positive view of the world, they take care of themselves, and with that sense of connection, they form a stronger bond to the community. So what we have is not only an individual who is positive in their view of the world, but we create stronger communities. So I think resilient communities, resilient individuals are what we're all striving for.
Okay, very good. And what happens if you're not resilient? What are some of the effects that could happen to that person, to their family, to the community when they're not resilient?
Well, I think we're beginning to really understand the science of resiliency and its impact when we're not resilient on individuals and the community. So one thing we know is that people that are not resilient tend to have higher frequency of depression. We know that their personal health and well-being is not as good as it could be. So we tend to see people that may be obese and suffer from more chronic health conditions. So again, we're really interested in overall health when we talk about resiliency. And we know that if we can create that, because we can teach resiliency.
Well, I was just going to say, is this something that you just either have in you, or can you learn to be resilient?
Well, I think that there are individuals that seem to inherently have the characteristics within them, but we know as we start to study the field of positive psychology that we can begin to teach and enhance those characteristics in individuals. So it is absolutely worth individuals and communities focusing on the techniques to create resiliency.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
To view this webisode and all the other webisodes in the series, please log on to www.missionhealthyliving.org and go to the media section.